It feels like, in the last few years, there has been a huge resurgence in survival horror amongst big budget games. The Resident Evil series has released remakes of its older titles, Dead Space 1 got a remake, and new titles like Alan Wake 2 are absolutely smashing it. It seemed a shame then that another classic survival horror series, Silent Hill, had been, well, silent. With the disastrous HD collection and Hideo Kojima's PT being scrapped and consigned to oblivion in 2014, it began to feel like the series would never return. That all changed at the end of 2022 when Bloober Team announced they were working with Konami to remake Silent Hill 2, a game generally regarded as the best in the series, and I was so excited. Silent Hill 2 was the first game in this series I had played, and although I'd gone back to play the others after, it held an incredibly special place in my heart. However, as the initial trailers come out and time went on, I began to worry. There was something about that trailer that made me hesitate. Would this remake do the game justice? These worries sat with me throughout the launch period, but I decided to buy the game and give it a try. I decided to play through this game with my wife, as I wanted her to see the story of a game that I loved so much, but it did mean playing through it only a couple of hours a week when we had the time. Eventually, we finished it towards the end of 2024, and a few days after that I had cleaned up the remaining trophies and had the platinum. So, were my fears founded, or had the game hold up? Was the platinum a grueling experience, or was it a fun one? Let's find out. If the last console generation has taught us anything, it's that there are many different approaches to remaking or remastering a game on modern consoles, and the preference, I imagine, would change depending on who you ask. Is it better to be as faithful to the original as possible, like the PS4 remake of Shadow of the Colossus, where the only changes are updates to graphics and the control scheme? Or is it better to make huge sweeping changes to the original at the same time, in the way that FF7 Remake and Rebirth have? Much like the Resident Evil remakes, Silent Hill 2 falls somewhere in the middle of the extremes. The story is much the same as the original, the places you go to exactly the same, and even the same endings with the same criteria are there. However, everything in the game has been expanded on or improved. The biggest and most obvious of these changes is expectedly the graphics. Originally an early PS2 game, Silent Hill 2 did an amazing job at the time hiding some of its graphical limitations with its use of fog and darkness. Now, in 2024, Silent Hill 2 looks incredible. I played through the game in quality mode, which I don't usually do because the game looked so good. There is a level of detail infused in each environment that makes it clear how much love has been put into recreating the spooky town. Rooms are filled with an almost palpable feel of decay and ruin, and the enemies look and move in such a disgustingly eerie fashion that you can't help but stare at them. Despite the environments of the game looking so good, Bloober has done a fantastic job of keeping it hidden away to keep the feel of the original. Thick fog fills the outside as you explore, making it difficult to see anything ahead of you, and when it's dark, oh my god, does it get dark. Running through these almost pitch-black areas with just your small torch to light your way makes the environment feel oppressive and claustrophobic, never being sure of what's just a few feet ahead of you. Similarly, James and the rest of the cast have all had impressive glow-ups, with Maria in particular getting a really great redesign. While the game does retain its slightly wooden, dreamy conversations, the improved facial animations make their interactions so much better and feel a lot less stilted than the original. Enemies have had small touch-ups too, their grotesque, disturbing designs now looking more horrific than ever. I did face some small graphical issues, but not ones that I really noticed until I was going on my New Game Plus run, like some small texture pop-ins and some frame drops here and there on quality mode. But this was nothing at all that got in the way of me enjoying how great the game looked and how well it played.
I don't look like a ghost, do I? See? Warm.
Sorry, I got confused.
The gameplay of Silent Hill 2 has also been revamped and drastically improved over the original. Taking lessons from modern survival horror games, Silent Hill now features an over-the-camera shoulder to go with a modernised control scheme. Combat still feels a bit awkward and clumsy, especially when compared to last year's Resi 4 remake, but that has always felt just a little bit intentional with Silent Hill, and it's still a huge improvement over the original. Aiming feels snappier, although it does have a large amount of sway if you shoot too quickly, and this highlights James' lack of firearm training. His melee swings are wild and not incredibly accurate, but they do have a good feeling of weight to them, which I appreciated. Combat in Silent Hill was actually quite hard too, with some enemies hitting for huge chunks of your health, even on the normal difficulty. This does actually lead into one of my biggest issues with the game though. Combat is much better than it was, and I'm sure with an improved combat system, Bloober really wanted to give people more chances to use it. But there is sometimes too much combat. Silent Hill has always been more of a psychological horror than its closest counterpart, Resident Evil, and in the original, combat was common, but not frequent. In the 2024 remake, combat is so common that it actually gets in the way of the game's atmosphere and its horror. There is an enemy type called a mannequin that likes to hide and jump out at you. I liked this the first couple of times it happened, especially as sometimes you can see them run off to go and hide somewhere ahead of you. It built tension, knowing that they were there, but never being sure where they were. After the 6th time I saw this happen, I was done with them. The dread of seeing one was gone, and it didn't take long to start making jokes about, oh, they're trying their best, or recognising straight away the kind of places they were going to hide, and being able to spot them before they could even try and jump out at us. This doesn't just happen with these mannequins though, it happens to all of the non-boss monsters in the game, and it's actually really disappointing because the monsters look so great, and there are moments of genuinely scary jump scares in the game that are ruined by overuse. The bosses, however, are amazing, with so many improvements to some of the weaker bosses in the original, making them so much more fun, as well as a lot more terrifying. On the other hand, although extending and increasing the combat didn't add that much to the game for me, the additional puzzles and areas to explore in Silent Hill were fantastic and much appreciated. All of the puzzles I could remember from the original were there, but they've all been revamped, tweaked, or moved, and so many new ones have been added on top of that. It makes the game's runtime a little bit longer, but I've never felt like the game outstayed its welcome. The world feels more elaborate and cohesive, and it felt so good to explore this town again with its million locked doors and its elaborate puzzles. As I said at the start, I was worried when I heard there was going to be a remake of Silent Hill 2, and most of this worry was about changes to the narrative of the game. I love the story of Silent Hill 2. It's dark, it's moody, and it tackles some incredibly heavy themes. Thankfully, the majority of my fears about this were unfounded. It's not like there have been no changes to the story at all. It's all things like some of the dialogue has been changed, or new scenes have been added to flesh out some of the characters a bit more. All of the characters have new voice actors too, with different voice directions, so some scenes do feel slightly new and reimagined, but none of them are bad in any sense. There are some scenes that miss out on the weird dreamlike quality the original had an abundance of, but I quite enjoyed the reimagining of everything anyway. Even with these slight tweaks, Silent Hill 2's story remains one of my favourite game narratives of all time, and I'm so pleased that this is still true. All of the classic endings are there, including the dog one, and there are even 2 new ones hidden behind new items you can find on New Game Plus that were amazing additions, and one of them has become one of my favourite endings in the game. So finally, let's talk about Silent Hill 2's trophy list, and what is involved in earning the Platinum Trophy, You Made Me Happy. Silent Hill 2 has 3 major collectible types to watch out for as you're exploring the town. The first of these are the 68 memo notes that are dotted around the map for Archivist. Most of these are pretty important for getting through the game anyway, as a lot of them have hints or codes that you will need to get through the game's many puzzles. There are also 26 strange photos that you can find. These are a bit better hidden than most of the memos, and once you have found them all, you will earn the trophy Pieces Unarranged. Lastly, there are my favourite collectibles in the game called Glimpses of the Past. These are cool little spots that James can examine, and it looks like he disassociates for a second when he does. But What these are small little references to the original game where things have been changed in the remake, like the first one you find being the tunnel where James encounters his first enemy in the 2001 game. Finding all 26 of these will give you the Echoes trophy. It has to be noted none of these finds will transfer over to New Game Plus, so you will need to find all of them in one playthrough. There are also a few miscellaneous trophies to watch out for too, like spending 10 minutes on Toluca Lake when you get there after leaving the prison, and after leaving the hospital, make a quick stop in room 106 at Jack's Inn to see a nice little Silent Hill 3 reference. The remainder of the trophies are mostly story related, or for getting 6 of the game's 8 endings. I'll not spoil how to get the main 3 endings, as I think it's better for you to figure them out for yourself, and see the ending you get without looking it up. The other 3 endings are locked to New Game Plus, however, and require you to find specific items that will only appear on your second playthrough. The first of these is a blue gem you can find in the Jewelers next to Big J's Diner on Neely Street at the beginning of the game. You need to use this gem in 4 places: the roof of the Saul Apartments, the pier of Rosewater Park where you meet Maria, the dock when you get to the Lakeside Hotel, and finally in room 312 of the hotel. If you use the gem at the right place, it will grow briefly and you will hear a weird alien-like noise. And once you have done this at all 4 locations, you will unlock the UFO ending and the tinfoil hat trophy. For the infamous dog ending, you will need to find 2 parts of the dog key, one in the pet store on Neely Street and one in a kennel behind a house on Munson Street. Combine these 2 to get the dog key, and then use the key on the observation room door in the Lakeside Hotel to unlock the Goodest Boy. The last of these endings involves another 4 hidden items: a book in the cemetery right at the beginning of the game, a liquid at the Baldwin mansion that you can only reach after you have found Maria and go through Jack's Inn, a goblet in the Historical Society, and one other book in the Lakeview Hotel Lost and Found. Once you have found all 4 of these items, beat the game again and earn Defy Even Death. The last few trophies to be aware of, and also probably best to be done on your New Game Plus run, are Faster Than Fog, for finishing the game in less than 10 hours, which is pretty easy to get if you know where you're going and you remember the puzzles. There is also As Close As You Like, for only using melee weapons. This is so much easier on your second run, as you can find a chainsaw that you can pick up right at the beginning of the game, opposite Silent Hill Ranch. Lastly, there is Radio Silence, which is for completing the game without using the radio. You need to turn the radio off as soon as you get it in your first combat encounter by going into the menu and manually turning it off. Once you have finished the game with this, Silent Hill 2's Platinum Trophy will be yours. The original Silent Hill 2 is one of my favourite games of all time, and the 2024 remake is absolutely fantastic. It has been crafted with such care, and the adoration and respect for the original shines through. Not only is it an amazing remake, it is a superb survival horror game in its own right. Although there are a few missteps, it is a game that I would wholeheartedly recommend to anyone with a few trigger warnings. It could be, though, that my review is biased, blinded by nostalgia for the original, so I asked my wife, who had never played a Silent Hill game before, what she thought of it, and here is what she said. Perhaps my favourite part of playing Silent Hill 2 was coming up with new theories or adapting old ones to explain the characters and events as we progressed through the game. My theories ranged from some being fairly accurate to completely nonsensical and unhinged. The puzzles were interesting, varied and genuinely challenging, and I found myself taking notes and pictures to help investigate and solve them. The sheer terror of finding a pair of legs crawling about on the ceiling like a spider is also unmatched, and this game has made me jump more than any other I've played. I prefer the gameplay of games like Resident Evil, but I feel Silent Hill makes up for this with a haunting narrative that stayed with me long after I was done, and this was one of the best games I've played this year. Thanks for watching this review of the 2024 Silent Hill 2 remake and its Platinum Trophy. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing, and let me know if there are any other survival horror games you have enjoyed recently. And until next time, happy hunting.